Well, good morning, the franchise pros. Look at that. That's a nice background.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Can you tell what my favorite color is?
No, I can't. You have all these colors on your beautiful blouse and all this stuff. So you're all over the place. That's pretty cool. So no, I just want to say thank you for joining me. So tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, Eric, thank you so much for having me on your podcast this morning. It's a delight to be here with you. My name is Faizun Kamal. And as you said, I'm here with the Franchise Pros. We are a full service franchise consulting and development firm based here in the Washington, D.C. area. What that means in plain English is that we do two and only two things for our clients, Eric. The first group of clients are professionals like you and me, who, for whatever reason, might be thinking about leaving corporate America. And they have desires of starting a business, but they don't want to strike it out on their own. Instead, they want to become a part of a well-known, robust franchise brand that's out there. So through the proprietary process that we have, we guide them through it and help them find the right franchise opportunity for them. So that's our first group of clients. Our second group of clients, Eric, are business owners, entrepreneurs who have brought their company, their business to a certain point. They are ready for that next stage of growth, and we help them turn their business into a national franchise brand. So those are the two things that we do. Yes.
Great, great. No, I think that's great. I think it's good for people to understand the opportunities in both areas. It's you can either join a franchise or be part of that community, or think about your business and franchise your own business, right? So
Exactly.
let's tackle the first element. Joining the franchise community. Because so when someone, let's say I say, hey, I call a friend of mine and say, hey, you're thinking about joining a franchise. I know this great person that you can call. What are some of the steps you would take people through to prepare them to make that final decision?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Eric, over the years, I've developed this 6-step search process that I've at this point taken hundreds of clients through. And it's a very simple process, but it's very intuitive and it's very effective if you apply the process, right? That's the rub there. It's very simple, but it's very effective. Essentially, what I lead clients through when they come to me is, first of all, we have a partnership at this point with at this point, I would say 550 different franchise brands. Most of them are based here in the United States. Many of them are global. And you can imagine it, Eric. One of the biggest myths in franchising, my friend, is where people will say, well, what do you mean diversity in franchises? Isn't a franchise all about burgers and fries, right? It's all about McDonald's and Burger King. And that is partially true. Yes, food is one category, but at this point, just in the United States, you have more than 3,600 different franchises in more than 100 different industries. So whether it's food, children, education, senior care, healthcare, retail, automotive, fitness, wellness, I mean, it goes on and on and on, right? Brands in every industry you can imagine. By guiding the client through what is really a very educational process where they're going to come in, where after understanding kind of who you are, what are your goals and objectives? What are your superpowers and what are your blind spots, right? Getting a nuanced understanding of who you are. We then start matching you, the client, with brands in our inventory that, based on my understanding of who you are, I feel holds the greatest probability of success for you. Once I introduce you to the brands, Eric, the expectation is fairly straightforward and simple. Every week, you, the client, are going to have one call with each brand. And this, by the way, is a process that we refer to in the industry as due diligence. You are doing due diligence on the brands, taking a deeper peek into every aspect of the business that you as a potential franchisee needs to understand and know about. Every week, the client and I have a touch base. And this is my opportunity to kind of understand, are you moving in the right direction? Are there questions, concerns? Are there things that you need me to address in a timely manner, right? I describe it this way, Eric. You, the client, are in the driver's seat at any point in time. I, as your coach, am sitting beside you in the passenger seat. And we're going down this long highway. And as we keep moving, I look over and I see that you, Eric, are starting to nod off at the wheel. And I shake you and I say, Eric, wake up, wake up. We're heading into the guardrails, right? And then you right the vehicle back again. That in a, if you will, metaphorical way is what I do as a coach. I guide you through a process that typically most clients, Eric, who come to me, they have never done this before. And, a franchise can be a significant investment. It's a little more expensive than going into the mall and buying a pair of pants. So you want to be able to be very deliberate and intentional about this process. And you have me as your coach to be able to say, hey, Eric, there are a couple of potholes you want to look out for. Hey, Eric, have you thought of these questions as it pertains to you and your family and the business that you are looking for, right? So every step of the way, I'm guiding you to ask questions that maybe you haven't thought of yourself, to be able to take a peek out of your own worldview, step away from that, look at it a little bit differently to try and analyze the brands that we are looking at. The process start to finish, Eric, takes typically about 3 months for most people, 90 days. In addition to introducing clients to brands, I also introduce them to my funding concierge. Franchise funding a business, it's very different from getting a mortgage or getting a car note. It's significantly different. And so what my person does with every client we have is, as we figure out, you and I figure out what the brand is that's right for you, she will help you figure out, based on your specific financials, what is the most optimal funding strategy for you once we've found the right franchise.
Yeah.
Let me kind of stop there. I gave you a lot.
No, that's perfect. That gives a really good overview of what people should expect in going selecting the franchise route. So you mentioned you have about 500 to 550 partners with franchises. So if you can give a little bit of an insight as to how do you match person A with franchise B out of the 550?
That's right. Oh, that's how many hours do we have for this conversation, Eric?
We got the whole day. Come on.
All right. All right. Let's jump right into it. I say that, my friend, because, if, so my book, which came out about a year and a half ago, it's called The Right Franchise for You. And there's a word that I use in the book over and over again. It's a tiny little word, and the word is fit. It's a tiny word with significant implications for the client. What do I mean by fit, Eric? So to the question you asked me, you come to me, I don't know you from a stick in the mud. We are meeting for the first time. But hopefully, as I take you through this process, I'm going to call you an onion, my friend. As we go through the process, I start to peel the layers of the onion that's Eric. And we are all like onions, right? With all of our histories and our stories and our backgrounds and the different jobs that we may have had in the past, or businesses that we may have owned for some of us. But as I take you through this process of kind of uncovering who you are, fit becomes important. So I'll give you a little bit of a silly example, but I think it'll underscore the point. This business that I have, Eric, in order for me to get the best quality clients who are serious about doing something, I run educational franchise workshops in the DMV area where I'm located. Typically, pre-pandemic, what did that mean? I would walk into a room full of complete strangers and I would engage them in an hour-long conversation with me about what it means to look for a franchise. Now, let me ask you this. If I was someone who the thought of talking to complete strangers made me want to vomit, just the thought of it, right? I got palpitations every time I got up there. And in order for me to be successful in my business, that is what I needed to do. how successful do you think I, in my particular business model, would be?
Ooh, mm, good luck.
Good luck.
You better get retrained in learning how to do it, or just figure out if you really want to take that next step to get it done, to be successful in that
To be
business.
successful,
Yeah.
right? Instead, so instead, if that was naturally my personality, right?
Right.
And this was something that I was very comfortable with, which I am. I'm very social by nature. I like to reach out to
Right.
people, right? So this is what I mean when I talk about the fit. When I find these different characteristics in a client, they may be really strong in the operations side. They may be a marketing ninja. They may be
Mhm.
really, really skilled at customer service based on their prior positions. Whatever those skill sets are, I try to call them out. And I call them, Eric, I call them transferable skill sets. These are
Mhm.
skill sets that I can take from you, and I can parlay you and your skill sets into any number of franchises that require those exact same skill sets. So if I
Right.
have a brand that says, we require someone who is very sociable, who's very social, has no issues going to networking meetings and going up to complete strangers and introducing themselves, doing A, B, C, and D. Um, when the brand tells me that's who they're looking for, and you, the client, have those qualities, to me, that starts to say potentially there's a great fit here. So
Right.
that's really one of the first things that we do in getting people matched up with brands, because I say this, Eric, there's only one Eric, but there are
That's right.
thousands of franchises out there. Exactly, that is right. That is right. So what are those small handfuls of franchises that hold the greatest probability for who Eric really is?
Right.
Once I start to understand who Eric really is, that is where I can start to do the work that I do of matching people up with brands.
No, I think that's a great process that people really need to hear and really need to understand as part of this overall process. It's what's a good fit for you, right? For the individual, but also the financial part. Because it takes, every I look at it this way: every business owner should have a social element to them, right? By nature, we're either introverts or extroverts, but in the end, for a business owner, we have to get in front of the camera, whether we like it or not. We have to represent our brand, our business. You have to represent the people in our company at some day. Someone's going to call, like when I called you and said, hey, can we do this? And you're like, sure. You're representing your company and your brand. So that element has to be there. And should that person shift and learn and be more, push themselves to that limit, it's also based on their personal goals, which is about the financial part of it. To some degree, it's based on their financial part. So people really, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a great process to other people understand the details of it. Have you ever tried to match someone on their personality and they're thinking, hey, I want to own this type of franchise, and you're like, you know what? You'll be surprised based on what your personality trait is or what I've learned from you. It's something they never even would consider. Has that ever occurred?
All the time, Eric, all the
Exactly.
time, right? It is way more common than you would think. I'll give you a funny example. At least once, and I say at least once, it's typically
Right.
at least 2, 3 times, but at least once a week, I will have someone who will call me and say, Faizun, I'd like to get a Chick-fil-A. Faizun, I'd like to get into a McDonald's, right?
Right.
Now, here's the thing, my friend. Most people, because these are the brands that we see when we are out and about, these
Right.
are really the only franchises we think of when we think of the word franchise. But as
Mhm.
we talked about, they haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible if that is the road that they want to go down on. You just mentioned funding.
Mhm.
Funding is a critical piece to the fit. You can want a franchise all you want all day long, but in addition to the want, you must also have the financial wherewithal.
Right.
So when I say to you, when you come to me, that I'm going to introduce you to my funding concierge, it's a very deliberate thing,
Mhm.
because as your coach, before I can match you up with a particular brand, Eric, I need to understand, number one, do you have the financials to be
Right.
able to support that business. And then number two, very importantly, every brand that I introduce you to, they will want to know this. In that first year of business, William, Eric, Lindsay, do you have enough of a cash cushion
Right.
that should something unexpected happen? Because remember, the first 12 months, it's like a newborn baby. This is where you have to take care of it and nurture it the best you can. And if something happens and you don't have the money to be able to figure it out very quickly, you have now lost your entire investment and the time and energy that you've also put into
Yep.
building that business. So the funding, the financial piece is also a great, a big part of the fit that we are talking about.
Yep. Yep. And that's a great segue into going from getting a good match or a good fit. I like that word. Fit for growth.
Oh,
And
that's right. That's right. Exactly.
so, so, and then understanding, the good match or the fit that matches that individual, that fits that individual to be successful in the 550 franchises that you represent globally. And then the financial part. So the financial projections are always, I tell this to all of my clients. I said, it's good to know your numbers, but your numbers tell you one thing. The most important thing your numbers tell you is the story, right? It tells you the story of, okay, this is what I need to do on a daily basis to hit my yearly goal, right? So that's the story. It's not about, I want to make $1 million. No, the story is you have to make 10 calls a day to get to your first quarter goals. Are you willing to do that? So I love that you have someone working with you to do the financial projections on the business development side, because that's so important. Because someone might say, I want to get a Chick-fil-A, not promoting them or anything, but that's the example, because they see lines of cars, they're making money. So let me ask you this. What is the range to front end cost a Chick-fil-A? What is the price range, the investment range?
Absolutely. So this is the part where everyone listening to your podcast immediately hates me.
Right.
So this is the part. So first of all, Chick-fil-A is not a franchise. It is one of the biggest myths that is out there, right? So anyone listening to this, they should Google it. Now, what I find interesting these days, Eric, is the word franchise is used a little bit loosely. So for example, we hear the Washington Redskins is a franchise, right? These sports teams are, now that's a very different definition
Yes.
of franchise than what we are using on the podcast today, right? Using the definition we are using today, Chick-fil-A is not a franchise. So the reason that many people get excited, again, we're not promoting Chick-fil-A, folks, but we're using that as a concrete example. People get excited about Chick-fil-A because you're going in, you are looking at about $10,000, roughly, give or take. And people think, oh my gosh, what? I get like a location, a retail location, and all this set up, and for $10,000, folks, stop and think for a moment.
Yep.
Does that even make sense? Of course it doesn't, right? You're looking at a retail brick and mortar. It cannot be $10,000. Here's what happens. Chick-fil-A corporate holds all of these locations. And when you come on board, when you are the manager of a location, you have a job, my friend. It's a job. And when at any point in time down the road, you decide you're going to part ways and go do something else, it's like any other job you've ever had. You walk away with zero equity because all you had was a job. You never owned the business. You managed the location, but you never owned the business. Contrast that to a franchise, a real franchise, where coming in, you have an upfront investment. Typically, that investment includes some money that you put in and the rest that you're going to finance. And there are different ways of doing that. But that amount enables you to get into a franchise and open up what we call one location of that franchise. As time goes on, typically franchise agreements, Eric, with your brand, they're typically 10 years. In some very few instances, I have seen 7, but that's very, very rare. I've seen 10 as sort of being the standard. If you run your franchise for the next 10 years, and you do it, and you'll hear me use the word deliberate over and over again, because it's that important.
Mhm.
If you run your business deliberately from day one, at the end of 10 years, your exit strategy could well be where
Yes,
you are selling your business, it becomes a saleable asset,
right.
and you are selling for more than one multiple of your total top line revenue. So most people, if you are making $150,000 a year, that's kind of about the sale price of the business. It's one times total revenue. But if
Mhm.
you've been deliberate in a franchise model, you should be able to sell your business at that point for multiples of your
Right.
total revenue. That's the point, right? So that's a big difference between a startup business and a franchise business that someone might choose to go into. Did I answer your question, or did I just go off on a
No, you
tangent?
did, because
Okay.
no, you actually you did, because a lot of some individuals, I wouldn't say a lot, but many individuals need to consider that, is what is the front end cost for the franchise, right? Or in some cases, some licensing also has a space in this conversation as well, because licensing is a different, it's not a franchise model, because the franchise model, I'm not a lawyer, but in franchise models, you have to be filed in franchisable states. You have to have the FDD, the full disclosure documents. You have to file your business. The corporate headquarters has to be filed in a state that's actually, you're selling the franchise in with the Attorney General's office for the SEC group within that state. So you have to be sure that within the FDD, which is the franchise disclosure documents, they're allowed to exist in your state. Put it that way. And some states are a lot better for franchises than others.
Yes.
I won't name the states, but in one particular state, it's called the May I state,
Uh-huh.
and they're very strict on their franchise, their FDDs. And some states very loose. They make it easy. They make the entry into business pretty easy.
That's right.
And no matter where you live, you have to know what the rules of the game are. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So looking at the range of the investment, your clients really need to understand that as well, and you give them that process, because they're like, okay, if you want to do this franchise, like you said, you need a brick and mortar. Now, looking at the rental rates, let's just pick in our area, the
Right.
DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Rental rates are going up. They're going up. So if you can't, you look at a year of rent, sometimes that's about $150,000, almost $200,000 a year in rent. So right there, are you ready for that battle? You know?
And I think this is a good point too, Eric, to mention that not every franchise requires a brick and mortar
Right,
location, right? So
right.
when we start to talk about the different industries and the different categories, this is where sort of those subsections come in. This is
Mhm.
one of the key pieces that we educate clients on. So for example, you might have a business where you are running a children's education model. It's a tutoring business,
Right.
but your model is fully online.
Yep.
But that in that children's education space, Eric, there are also many franchises where they absolutely will tell you you need a brick and mortar location,
Yeah.
right? Now, is one bad and the other good? No, each has pros and cons, like
Right.
anything else. And so when I talk about the fit, back again to the word fit, it's what the client wants.
Yes.
If you have a brick and mortar location, marketing in some sense becomes easier. People see you, they drive
Right.
past you, they can walk by you, versus if you're fully online. But if you have a brick and mortar, you do have the rental, the fixed expenses of paying the rental amount every month. So it depends on what it is you're looking for, and very importantly, what are you comfortable with?
Yes.
Right? Are you comfortable hiring a team of people? You might say, Faizun, I'm looking for a business where I want to create a lifestyle for myself and my family, be able to take off, spend time with each other. So, yes, I want to hire employees. It allows me to take my foot off the pedal and
Mhm.
step back a little bit. Others might say, oh, no, no, I intend to hit it really hard over the next 10 years. It's going to be me. I want it to be, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I want to make as much as I can. It's going to be all my effort. Either
Yep.
is fine, but it's understanding what the client is really looking for.
Yep. Yep. And there were two things that I don't want to just gloss over it. There were two things that you mentioned. Um, One was the perspective of working with someone who is going into the franchise for the first time,
Mm.
right? So you take them through that process where there is, let's find a fit. And then once we find a fit, you get a list of franchisees, you get a list of franchises they can consider. And then they start their due diligence. They start calling the franchises. They start talking to the community, start to, see if it's a really a good fit. Then you look at their financials. So these are folks who are sort of new to that process. So that's one of the first things I want to cover. So this is actually my question. What about people who are buying a franchise that already exists from someone who's selling their own franchise? Do you deal with those individuals as well?
So I don't.
Okay.
I don't. So what you are referring to, Eric, are what in our industry we refer to as resales.
Right.
So you're a franchisee, you are running a business, and for whatever reason, you're ready to sell. And so your business gets put on the market.
Mhm.
So the brand that you're a part of will say, hey, Faizun, we have a resale in Alexandria, Virginia. This is how much we're selling it for. Um, I don't touch resales for some very specific reasons, Eric. It's neither good nor bad. It's my decision.
Mhm.
But the biggest reason why I don't touch resales, fully 95% of all businesses for resale have something in them that you as the buyer will not discover until after you've bought it.
Mm. Hmm. Interesting.
Right? So think about it for a moment, take a step back. You and I have heard of many businesses who have not one, but two sets of books.
Never heard that before.
Never heard that. Okay, never heard that.
No, I'm
That's
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, no, I get
but
it.
let's like that is the real conversation.
Yeah,
So what exactly are you using to make the decision to buy that business?
right.
Now, franchises, they have very stringent processes in place. There are typically not a lot of ways to um, avoid stating what the real revenues of the business are,
Mhm.
but there may be other things. I'll give you another example. You're looking at a business for sale. It's a franchise. And you look at the numbers are attractive. There's already a team in place. And you've now met with the seller, and you've met with the seller's team of employees. And you're super excited, Eric, because you're saying, oh my gosh, once I buy the business, their top salesperson, she is just ninja. She's going to really help me hit the numbers out of the park. Well, my friend, here's what you don't know that was never revealed to you.
Right.
As soon as you buy the business and the ownership changes hands, this sales lady, she's out the door. She might have a relationship with the prior seller. They
Right.
might have some agreement where she said, when you sell, I'm no longer going to be a part of this business. You just don't know that. So you are banking a lot of your future sales and future profitability of your new business on this one person who's going to be out the door as soon as the business changes hands. And
Right.
that's just one little example. So in my business, I find for most people who have never owned a business, Eric, it is far better for me to guide them through a process where they buy into a new territory and they build the business up from scratch. Existing businesses, because there are so many unknowns, I don't feel that in good faith, I can tell my client, I feel confident showing you this resale.
Got it.
Right? For me, that's incredibly important because I stake my knowledge and my reputation ultimately on being able to show brands that I believe in, that I think
Yeah.
have a fantastic track record to my client. Why? Because I know that when they move forward, if the client has done what the franchisor is telling them to do, they have followed the playbook, they have done all those things, they will be successful. In a resale, that confidence level for me goes down quite a bit. So I do not
Yeah.
touch sales.
And that's why it's important for folks to really, for us as business owners to understand the aspect of not just buying a franchise, but also you're buying a business, right? So you certainly want to understand, like you mentioned, the brandability of it. What's the valuation of that brand? what is the possible equity you can receive from if I buy this franchise and build this business? What is the headquarters of the franchise company? What do their numbers look like? So you really want to dig deep into asking those questions. And that's why I certainly enjoy what you said about reselling, because when you're reselling, my brain went to, wow, I need to hire an accountant or almost like a forensics accountant to look into the books and have a very good franchise lawyer. And I know a really good one. I have to introduce you to the franchise lawyer. He's excellent. I think he's one of the best. But having a really good lawyer who can work with that process, that's an added fee.
Mhm.
And these are upfront things and just to do the discovery. So I think it's really good for people to just make those considerations, especially when going down this route. And the second thing is, I didn't want to just gloss over, is the exit part. You did mention, how would you like to exit at year 10 based on the, having that multiplier. So I look at it as improving equity and business valuation. So what are some of the things? So what's so important about the exit strategy is revealed in the FDD, in the franchise disclosure documents, because, and I wonder if you can touch a little bit on this. Why is it so important for everyone to really analyze that FDD?
Absolutely. Eric, let me use this phrase, my friend. What I help my clients do when we make the decision to work together is, every step of the way, I tell them over and over again, Eric, we have to set the table right.
Yep.
So yesterday was Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you, by the way, my friend. So let's think of the Thanksgiving table, right? You lay out the tablecloth. You put the place settings, you put the plates, the cutlery, the silverware, the whatever you put, right? And then you put a big vase of flowers in the middle, whatever it is that you do. You're setting the table. Before the food even comes, before your guests sit down, you're setting the table right. If you didn't, and your guests came and you all sat down to eat, and then you said, oops, I forgot to put the silverware on the table, right? Doesn't make you look all that prepared. This is what we are doing. In a way, with clients, this is what we are doing. As we take you through the process, particularly when you get to the part where you're going to review the franchise disclosure document, the FDD. So I'll take a step back just for our listeners, Eric. The FDD is a legal document. It's typically several hundred pages long. It is comprised of 23 separate sections or items, as we call them. And these 23 separate sections cover 23 separate aspects of the franchise that you're looking into. It includes, for example, who's the management team? Do these people know what the heck they're doing? Item 7, which is your investment range. How much money does it take on average to get into business to open up one location of this particular franchise? And you'll get a range, 80 to 120,000. And in item 7, they will list out what that number is comprised of: the marketing fee, the this, the that, the technology platform, the POS, whatever, what have you, right? It's all there. One of the key parts in the FDD is what's called item 19, or the earnings claims, right? So as you might imagine, Eric, right? Everybody comes in and the first question after hi Faizun is, how much money can I make? Right? Yeah. Now, this is the second part of the podcast where your listeners are going to hate me because my answer will not make them happy. The answer is, it depends. Yeah. And it depends on a number of different things. First of all, it depends on what kind of franchise you're getting into. Franchises based on the industries that they're in have different rates of return. They have different net margins that you can make. If you have a business where your labor is very high, you probably are going to have higher net margins than maybe in a business where it's a little bit different. And I'm deliberately being general because I don't want to name names. Yeah, right. But net margins are different. If you have a business that requires a brick and mortar versus a business that's called a home-based business, your margins are going to be significantly different. But then very importantly, there's, and this kind of goes into another issue that we deal with, that I deal with all the time. It's the fear monster, right, that raises its ugly head. We'll talk about that in a moment. But one of the things, right, that clients will say is, well, you have to guarantee me how much money I'm going to make.
Ooh,
And I say, my friend, if you are looking for a guarantee, I'm not your girl.
good luck with that.
Find someone else, right?
Yeah,
Good luck with that. Do you have a
yeah,
guarantee in a job? That job can lay you off at any point in time if you have not already been laid off in your career. So
exactly.
you're asking me about guarantees. I can't give you any guarantees. But here's the thing. By going through this process, can you very deliberately, here's that word again, can you very deliberately reduce your risk? Heck yeah, you can.
Right,
You understand the business model. You are going to be talking to existing franchisees in that particular brand as part of your due diligence. And this is where you get to ask, not Faizun, who doesn't run that particular franchise, but Eric, who's a franchisee, maybe in a particular franchise, to say, hey,
right,
Eric, can you share with me, in the first 12 months of business, how much money did you make? When you paid for all of your expenses, how much money did you actually put into your bank account?
right,
Hey, Eric, you've been a franchisee for X years. Can you share with me a little bit about the support that you received, right? The key questions that most clients will have. You will get all your questions answered, right? Including that very important one, how much money are you making?
hmm,
And that becomes a good approximation for you then to back into your pro forma to say, okay, if I ran my business with X hours a week, with X employees, here's how much money I could potentially make. But ultimately,
right,
it depends on you, my friend, right? How
exactly.
aggressively you are running the business.
No, well said. Well said. I mean, can't add to that, to be honest. I mean, it's really up to the business owner, regardless of business type. It always ends up in the hands and the seat of the business owner. The success and failure of any business is 100% on the shoulders of the owner. Simple as that. That's how I try to make things very simple. That's how I see it. And and you're right. It's a lot of people going, well, not a lot, but some people ask you that question. Hey, Faizun, I want to make some money in this franchise. Really? Okay. Well, what are your cost of goods? Before you make a dollar, how much do you have to put into it?
That's right.
And then a lot of folks are looking like at they see a lot of folks see the corner franchise. Oh, they're making money, but talk to the people who own the franchise. Nothing
Right.
negative or bad. It's just it gives you a reality check. It sort of manages that expectation as well. Because owning a business is hard work and you just got to really stick at it and really do your due, and that's part of your due diligence process, correct? It's understanding the numbers, understanding, taking people through that reality check, to see, are they fit for reality?
Right.
Put it that
Reality.
way.
The key piece to this too as well, Eric, is so the question might be, well, if you can't guarantee me that, why am I going into a franchise? Why am I paying this money and going into a franchise? Well, here's why. And this is what due diligence is set up for you to uncover. If you could do X by yourself, can you do X times 100
Right.
when you have the support and the system of a robust brand behind you? That is what you're looking for.
Yep.
Not, can you guarantee me this much in income? No one can.
Right.
And if anybody does, you shouldn't just walk away from that person. You should run the heck away
That's
because they
good.
are being completely unethical and disingenuous if somebody should say that to you. They
Yep.
cannot. They cannot, right? But what kind of support is the brand giving you that essentially it becomes an effort multiplier? It becomes an equity multiplier, right? It becomes a profit multiplier. That is what a franchise model is intended to do if it's a robust brand.
Right, right. And yeah, that's very true. It's really about, and that gives you a good insight as the community. Once you start talking to the franchise partners who are partners within the franchise business, it really gives you a good sense of the community that's within that franchise, like the business owners and all
Right.
that stuff.
That's right.
That's also important, is to have that support system. Um, just having those people that, hey, who can you call to, because sometimes some people feel like that's my competitor, I don't want to talk to them. We're all human, we're all different, people think different ways.
That's right.
But in a good community, you're kind of like, hey, I just started, for example, I just started my franchise, for example, and I need to give you a call. What can you do to help me? And the minute you start getting great responses, that's a sign of a really good community. They don't see it as a competitive thing. It's just, hey, we're all here to help each other, you know?
So, I
And
think what you, sorry to jump in here.
no, you're good, you're good.
You reminded me, Eric, and I believe it was Ray Kroc of McDonald's fame, right? Who apparently said this, that in a franchise, you are in business for yourself, but you are never in business by yourself.
Right, yeah.
So that community that you refer to, absolutely, right? You and I are business owners, and entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey, right?
Yes.
Right? So to be able to have that peer group that is going through what you're going through, because you all are in the same business, you're all in the same system, can be hugely beneficial.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I like what you said too, because it's a great reminder to ask yourself that question. Why am I joining a franchise versus doing this on my own? And in a lot of ways, people leverage the franchise because it's a system. You're buying a system.
Exactly.
That's what you're doing. In some of my business webinars that I've done before, I always ask people the same question. It's like, okay, you have a food industry, a food restaurant that I won't name, but you have a food restaurant that you walk in, boom, turnkey, you're good to go. But then you have, a regular mom and pop corner restaurant, they sell the same item. If you had $1 million, which one would you spend on and why?
Mm-hmm.
You get various answers, but it's the why you want people to really analyze. Okay, well, this I'm buying a system. This one, you have to buy the restaurant and develop a system.
That's right.
To get your initial investment back. So basically it's a leverage game to some degree. So there's some credence to that, I would say, in that decision-making process.
100%.
And you mentioned this. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the second part of what your business does, which is the systems part, because obviously you work with business owners, a lot of people I probably work with, to develop their systems in their business so that they can become a franchise in the future. How do you work with those individuals?
Absolutely. So this is the piece of work that we refer to as franchise development, Eric. And this is where we sit down with a business owner. They have done X in top line revenue in the last 12 months. They may have one location, they might have multiple, they might have some employees, and they're at a point where they have put in their life savings. They may have taken out loans to grow the business. They just financially don't have any more to put in, but they still want to grow. So what do you do at that stage, right? And so this is where we will take that business and we're going to put in place the key things that you need in order for the business to legally operate. That's a key word, legally operate as a franchise. What are some of these key pieces? Right out the gate, a franchise is all about its playbook. You get an ops manual when you become a franchisee. So the question that we give to our client when we first sit down is to say, hey, Eric, so what you do you have it down somewhere? Is it documented somewhere? What are your best practices in how you do what you do? And 9 out of 10 times, Eric, the client will say, oh boy, I do, but it's between my ears, right? It's all up here. And so then the thing that our team sits down with the client to do is to essentially get all that good stuff that's in your head. We have to download all of that stuff.
Yep.
We have to standardize. We have to put processes in place. You already have the processes. We are simply making them much more sophisticated and standardized. So putting together your ops manual, that's a huge part of this process, right? So that's one key piece. The second key piece to becoming a franchise that can be sold nationally is what we referred to earlier. We need to have to put together for you your franchise disclosure document. The 23 separate sections on you, how you do what you do. Essentially, the FDD is the prospectus, right? Back when we used to get the stock prospectus in the mail, this is essentially the prospectus for the franchise that tells your future franchisees, hey, this is who we are. This is how we do what we do. This is why you should come join us, right? So it's putting that package together. And then last but not least, Eric, the third key piece to this, you mentioned this earlier, is franchising entails that in every state in which you do business, meaning you have a client who expresses an interest in coming into your franchise, if they live in DC, if they live in Maryland, Virginia, California, wherever around the country, before you can legally sell to a client there, you have to either be filed or registered in that particular state. These are state by state regulations that we deal with. With COVID, that process has lengthened out with so many people not working in the offices anymore, etc. That's where a little bit of the time comes in. But in the development process, we will typically tell clients from start to finish, soup to nuts, it's about a 4-month process that we take clients through to put all of these different pieces together. But for our clients, again, what we found, and this is a conversation we have with them from the get-go, is to say, we talked about exit strategy, Eric.
Yeah.
And many clients, I would say most clients, probably 9 out of 10, they're a little taken aback when we have this conversation, and the conversation goes something like this. We're going to help you franchise, but that's not really what we're doing, because turning you into a franchise is just the first step. What we first want to understand is, once we've turned you into a franchise, what kind of growth opportunities are you going to be looking at?
Right.
You turn into a franchise and you sit there and nobody knocks on your door. What did we just do? So before we even take you through the process, right, we want to understand that you have a model that's viable, a model that's scalable, a model that has national applicability. So if you're a franchise that sells slabs of ice, you may do very well in Miami, not going to do very well in, I don't know, Alaska.
Right.
But you don't have national adaptability, right? To give you a silly kind of example. But we kind of take you, the client, through these things before we even begin working with you, because it's that important to us. Why? Because as we look at you and we understand the viability and just the scope of your growth that you will have when you become a franchise, one of the questions we will ask you is, so Eric, when you've become a franchise, what kind of exit strategy do you have in mind?
Yeah.
And most people kind of sit there because they've never really thought about this, right?
Yeah.
Important. Again, using the word deliberate, being very deliberate about this. There's I won't name names. There's a particular home services brand that we helped franchise. We helped them grow to 300 locations in the first 18 months. And they then went to sell to private equity, and they sold for $387 million. Right? So this is just one example. And there are so many, many different examples of clients who've gone on to have that kind of growth, right? That kind of scale. But again, it ultimately depends on, what are you looking to do? How big are you looking to grow? How are you looking to exit out of this when the day comes?
Yeah, that's so important to understand that entire process, because you should have an SOP in your business. If even if something as simple as, when you make a sales call, how do you greet people? That's part of your SOP, all the way to how do you design this car? That's an SOP, and everything in between. The exit strategy, like you mentioned, is so important because, people just do the business every day, in and out every day. It becomes a job. But why are you doing this? What's your ultimate goal? How do you want to get out of this business? And the exit strategy, I kind of look at it in two ways. One is, yes, for the business owner who's going to convert their day-to-day business into a national franchise. There's an exit strategy there. And congratulations on that huge deal that you made with that home improvement, that home company. That was amazing. And then the other exit strategy is, how, now that my franchise agreement is over, before they sign, they should know how to exit. For example, I've known certain franchises that do this, that you can't compete with them in the same thing. So if you make, let's see, if you make excellent teas, the tea we drink, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I have a brand, I can actually do this on my own. Well, once you exit the franchise, you are not allowed to do it for a certain period of time, or maybe even in perpetuity. So that hurts your business and your dream. So people need to understand the exit strategy for the business planning aspect, but also the implication of the exit strategy from, what does the franchisor, what are their expectations for non-compete? It's so important for people to understand, to discern between the two, just to kind of know what you're getting involved in.
Exactly right. And when moving back to the first piece we talked about, helping clients figure out the right brand for them, Eric, when they get to a certain point in the due diligence process, I will then introduce every client to a franchise attorney. You mentioned
Yes.
one that that you work with. I'm not one. I work with some of the best in the country. And here's why I do that. Before you, the client, moves forward to sign anything with anyone, I want you to sit down with an attorney who has attorney eyes. I don't have them. And they're going to sit down with you and explain to you what are your rights, roles, and responsibilities as a franchisee vis-a-vis your franchisor. Very important. You're going to walk into this with your eyes wide open. At the end of the day, this is a legal relationship you're entering into.
Yep.
Right? This is not some handshake. All right, we're buddies. Let's go into business. It's not that. It's a legal relationship. And you have to be able to be sure that you can uphold your side of the bargain.
Yep.
Very importantly, and I don't say this to scare anyone, but I say this because, again, you want to walk into this with your eyes wide open. What does a worst case scenario look like for you, the franchisee?
Good question. Very good.
Map it out. If you're not able to hit sales goals, if you're not able to do A, B, and C, what does that look like? Does the franchisor have the ability to take away your business? What are the recourse measures in place, right?
Yep.
Again, what's that phrase? Trust in God, but tie your camel.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to have these contingency plans in place. And if you're not good at that, that's okay. This is where the attorney steps in.
Right.
This is where you have experts that I, as your coach, am going to introduce you to. So that by the time you get to the end of the process, Eric, you should be 101% confident. Not only is this the right brand, the right business for you, but that you feel very confident moving forward with it because you know what you're walking into.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing to think about, because it is a legal agreement. The FDD is a legal document.
That's right.
Once you sign it, you're in. And
you're in.
yeah. And every state is different. Like you mentioned, you want to be able to be sure that every state, you understand the state regulations on franchises, especially when someone that you like, what the example that you worked with, they started their own business, they converted it into a franchise model. I like the way you say it took 4 months to get to that process. So, if you're a business owner, start writing your SOPs, whether you're going to go to franchise model or not. You should have that in your part of your business plan anyway, and just to make that conversion is so important because there's a lot of opportunity there. But understanding the legal aspect as well is so important to get through. So yeah, and the exit strategy is it's all important, but these are questions that people should ask upfront, right? It's like, hey, how much money are you going to make? Well, this is how much money you could make. By the way, this is what happens if you don't.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's a normal human impulse, Eric, where we want to talk about all the good stuff.
Right.
Sure, we will talk about all the good stuff, but I have failed in my job as your coach if I have not given you a realistic picture that also includes potential cons. And by the way, most of these cons never come to pass. But you know why they never come to pass? Because the candidate prepared.
Right.
They did their due diligence. They understood what they were getting into. And when they got in with the brand, they were off to the races because the fit
Exactly.
was there.
Yep.
They loved the brand. They loved the culture. They fit in with the culture. They knew this is a fit with my personality. I'm going to go in and I'm going to hit the ground running on day one, right? So it's these kinds of things. It's coaching a client through them to say, whatever decision you make, it must be one that you feel 101% confident in your heart and
Yep.
your head as you move forward.
And yeah, that's well said, Faizun. So you mentioned the pandemic. Have you seen an uptick in individuals there you go, becoming more, pre-pandemic, what did it look like? And then, now that we're still in the pandemic, we're sort of getting out of it. Have you still see people moving into this franchise option?
Wow. Pre-pandemic, it was busy. It was busy with clients coming in,
I bet.
people looking at different opportunities to get into. Pandemic started in March. That quarter, right after the pandemic began, so April, May, June,
Mm,
um, things kind of fell off of a cliff.
wow.
So this is where I think psychologically people were just spooked. They didn't know what the heck was going on. We were dealing with something that none of us had ever seen before. And so there
Hmm.
was that space where I think people were just frozen in time. They were
Right.
not going to do anything until they figured out, got a handle on what was happening.
Hmm.
Post June, after the pandemic began, things just went bonkers. Things sped up, right? So it's been an insane 18 months. Always a good thing, right, for a business owner. Um, and really, I think there are a couple of things happening here, Eric. So think about all the information we saw on the different news channels or on in the newspapers about the millions of people who had been laid off. The numbers were unlike anything we had ever witnessed before.
That's true.
Many of these same people looked at this scenario and said, I just got laid off maybe for the first time. I just got laid off. Maybe this isn't my first time. At what point do I say enough is enough and take back the reins of my destiny back into my
Right.
hand, right? So you had that group of people. You had simultaneously a second group of people who, as we went into lockdown, you are not going to your office, you are not going into work, you are not getting up every morning, putting on your clothes, driving into work, going through that routine. These people said, oh my gosh, for the first time in my adult life, I'm spending this kind of time with family. I mean, I'm still working, right? You're still working
Right.
from home. But in the middle of your day, you might say, oh, my back hurts. Let me go take the dog out for a walk. Things that they had never done before. Their
Yep.
quality of life shifted. That work-life balance that we tout, falsely, I might add, I don't think there's any work-life balance. I really
No,
don't.
there isn't.
And I
There
say this
isn't.
as an entrepreneur, as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter. There's none, right? You kind of figure it out day by day. But that work-life balance crumbled away. They were spending time with their spouses. They were spending time with their families. And many of these people, Eric said, oh my gosh, now that my employer is saying, come back to work, do I really want to?
Right.
Because I've gotten a taste of this life. Is there an option out there that allows me to have this, but to be able to create an income generating vehicle that allows me, this is super important, allows me to live life on my terms.
Yep. Yep.
These are the people that have been coming to us. We have had record placements that we hadn't
Nice.
seen before pre-pandemic. It's interesting the kinds of industries that people have gravitated into. Overwhelmingly, we call this the home services industry, Eric.
Yeah.
So if you're a homeowner, right, things that you might need, so plumbing, HVAC, dryer vent cleaning,
Hmm.
right, window treatments, flooring, painting, roofing, on and on and on. These are businesses that we refer to as recession resistant or pandemic resistant.
Right.
Um, They also happen to be some of the most cost-effective businesses to get into with some of
Mhm,
the highest returns. Going back to labor is expensive. So these are
mhm.
labor-intensive businesses, Amazon-proof, if you will. We've seen huge numbers in that space, particularly, but in other industries as well.
No, the forced entrepreneurship skyrocketed um, um, in the year of the pandemic. And it was around the May, June time, because remember in the beginning they said, okay, only 14 days will shut down.
Mhm.
So 14 days and, you know, we're a year and a half into the
That's
still
right.
quasi shutdown. I'm like, it's the longest 14 days I've ever experienced.
That's right.
But everything you just said is so true, because it was part of it was forced entrepreneurship, like you mentioned. The other part was the quality of life, right? Um, a lot of people saw it differently. The perspectives changed. They're like, wow, hey, I don't have to drive in traffic. You know, I don't have to spend 2 hours a day behind another car trying to get home. My my activity efficiency actually increased. You know, my 24 hours a day really feels like a 24 hours a day. I'm not rushed. And it's your whole element changed. It completely different. You're 100% correct. And then the opportunity switched when 2 weeks turned into, different time lengths. And they were like, okay, what's really going on? How do I control my destiny? I love that you said that, because it's so true. It's the business, the people were like, and most individuals were like, okay, well, how do I not, it's risk management.
It's
That's
risk.
what it is. It's risk management.
The other thing too, Eric, and uh, I think this is a good point to mention this. I am not in the business of selling franchises, my friend. I'm in the business of transforming lives.
There you go.
Hugely different, Eric, right?
Mhm.
Hugely. I don't have a license to sell franchises. That's not what I do. But if I can get a sense of who you are, and if you are dedicated and committed to this process that we have, I will absolutely help you find the right franchise opportunity that transforms not just your life and the life of your family, but potentially the trajectory of your future generations. Franchising continues to be one of the very few vehicles that actually allows you to have intergenerational wealth creation, right? These
Mm.
are legacy businesses that when you're at the end of your period with a franchise and you're thinking exit. I have clients who've said to me, Faizun, this is something I intend to keep in my family for as
Right.
long as they want it. I don't know what my kids are going to do, but when I'm done, I intend to pass it down to my son or my daughter.
Yep.
So it's these sort of beyond this is how much money I want to make. Absolutely important. We all need money to live. I think it is really for us what we found, what our clients keep telling us, the testimonials that we get is it's a process that we take you through that is so far from transactional. It is not a transactional process. It is a life-changing process for the clients that we have placed in business. Those are the kinds of things that I focus on. I'll give you a quick example here. This brought tears to my eyes.
Mm.
This lady, she found us, she came to me. She was a VP of marketing. She was probably in her early 50s, mid 50s at the time. And she said, I have not really taken any vacation days
Wow.
in the last 10 years that I've been with my company. I said,
Mm.
tell me why. She said, well, Faizun, here's the thing. I'm an only child. My parents are now in their 90s. I'm 52, 53. My parents are now in their 90s. In my mind, I have had to plan for when one of them dies, how many days of bereavement leave is my company going to give me?
Wow.
Even as I'm saying this to you, I'm getting chills, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want
I
you to
felt.
understand these are real humans grappling with issues, life and death issues, right?
Mhm.
And you have a corporate culture that does not recognize that does not think it's important. And so this lady said to me, my parents, this brings tears to my eyes every time I
Mhm.
talk about this. her parents had immigrated from Greece many years ago.
Mhm.
And she said, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to find a franchise. I'd like to own a business where I own my time. Once we're out of the pandemic, I want to be able to take my parents back to Greece for a
Wow.
family vacation
Wow.
while they're still alive, right? So, my friend, when I say to you, I'm in the business of not selling franchises, that's what I mean.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the beauty, that's a beautiful story because that's what it's about. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And I totally I can feel the sentiment. I really do, because that's exactly that's a lot about, like, you and I, we're coaches, we're business owners. That's a huge reason why I love to see people who own businesses. You're basically, I'm coaching people to buy back their time. They work
I
60,
love that.
70, they
Yes.
work, yeah,
Yes.
they work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. But let's build a business together so that you can actually work 5 hours a week. You can work 10 hours a week if you want to, because you built a team, you built a system, you have an SOP
That's
that
right.
you can take a step back and then really enjoy life and really enjoy family. That is so important. And you having that, you taking that very successful person through that process was important for them, because they weren't interested in a franchise. They were interested in working with you because you solved their problem. Their problem was, I want my time back.
Right. That's right.
And it also reminds me, when she builds her business, she's gonna hire people with that mindset that, hey, you know what? You
Yes.
have a life. I
Yes.
know what it's like. You have a life. You need vacation, just go.
You have kids, you have
You have
aging
kids,
parents.
it's
Okay,
life.
we get it.
Just go. Yep.
Yeah.
So when I hear those stories, it's almost like, it's just, I'm going to say it, it's just crap human beings. It's crappy managers. If really, I don't live in the office. I have 24 hours, and I work with team members, and I'll just give you something a bit personal on my side. When I work with my team members, they're like, hey, what's our time? When do we start? When do you want us to end? I'm like, I don't really care. We have 24 hours in a day. If you have a flat tire and you're like, hey, Eric, I got to go and get my tire changed, I'm like, I don't really care. I was like, serve the customer.
That's
That's
right.
it.
That's right.
As long as you serve the customer, I don't care if you're doing the work and you have to take your car to the mechanic shop. Why are you telling me? I'm glad you told me, because I know where you are, but that's besides the point. You want to serve people. I'm a human being, you're a human being. Life happens.
That's right.
So that's why, you mentioned the work-life balance. There's no such thing. It's just, how do we harmonize? It's like a symphony. You have your strings, you have your quartet, you have your drums, you have your bass, you have the singer. Okay, you're the conductor of that life. How do you harmonize all these things to make beautiful music? It all has to happen together. And a lot of people who are managers, you're managing other human beings just like ourselves.
Mhm.
And you gave that woman an opportunity to probably be a very good manager in the future. She's going to take that lesson and be like, wow, I'm going to treat my employees different. And that's the beauty of what you just shared. So
I mean, to the point where, Eric, they've given a name to this. It's called the Great Resignation.
the great resignation. Yeah.
Right? It's the
Yes.
Great Resignation, and so you
Yes.
have to, and companies are trying to come up with these creative ways to lure back employees. Well, you don't have to lure anyone back.
Exactly.
You just have to be decent
Yeah.
in your management practices, right?
Yep.
So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it definitely starts there. It's be attractive to those that you're going to attract. you
Exactly.
know
Well put. Well put. Yes.
yeah. So it's interesting. So Faizun, I've just want to say, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank you.
and spending this time with me and sharing those personal stories, because it's so important to people to understand. It's not just about owning a business. It's about really being the conductor. of what the individual's trying to do with their life or their family. So if you were to leave us with one or two I guess things to think about, what would that one or two things be?
I think really the biggest thing I would say to anyone listening to us, Eric, is bet on yourself. It'll
Ah,
be the best investment you will ever make, bar none. Bar none. And if you
wow.
don't bet on yourself, can you really expect anyone else to? Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So with that, Faizun, thank you again. Great. I love that. Bet on yourself. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
I
Thank you so
hope
much.
it just will. Yes, I appreciate it. So thank you. Thanks again. Thank you so much, Faizun. Take care.
Of course. Take care. Bye, Eric.
Bye.